everybody, Sam here again. Thank you so much for joining us for another installment of Fearless Fridays on Facebook Live. I am joined here by Daniel from Investors Group for part 2 of our Figuring Out Financial Literacy conversation. So those of you who might have seen yesterday's talk, we had Paul here who works with Daniel for talking about kind of investments and how to save for your child's education. And then Daniel is joining me today to continue that conversation and talk a little bit about more what you as parents need to know and need to kind of save up for to make sure that not only is your child having a happy and successful future, but that you have one too. So thank you for joining me today, Daniel.
Well, thank you for having me, Samantha.
No problem.
Much appreciated.
Excellent. So let's kind of go off of where Paul and I kind of ended yesterday and talk a little bit about more of what parents need to know about investments and kind of saving for their future and saving for retirement and things like that. So the kids have gone off to school, you've done your savings, you've helped them out with education that way, and then they graduated, and now it's time to start thinking about you again. So what do parents need to know?
Well, you know what? There's a lot that parents need to know, and you know what? It's the onus is kind of on them to teach their kids as well, and that's why we try and teach the parents so that they can teach their kids. Really, starting off with retirement, it really comes down to it's quite interesting because over your entire lifetime, you build up all of these assets that you're saving up for retirement, and then as soon as you enter retirement, it flips, right? And then you start actually drawing down on your income instead of building up that income.
Sure.
And it's one of the most scary and exciting times in people's lives. And one of the questions that I get the most is, am I going to run out of money?
Yeah.
Right. And it's something it's very serious, and it's something can be very scary because a lot of people don't really know what the cost of retirement is.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Absolutely.
So it really comes down to figuring out what exactly you're going to be spending in retirement, what are the types of things that you want to do, and at the end of the day, you want to have a plan in place to understand where exactly you're going to be pulling your money from, and it may not be as sexy as you want it to be, but the taxes on it is actually massive. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, right?
Wow.
So there's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to retirement, but and an interesting stat actually in Canada alone is that our debt to equity ratio, so basically for every dollar of income that a Canadian household is earning, they're $1.70 in debt.
My gosh.
Which is, it's crazy.
That's crazy, yeah. I don't think anyone wants to be in debt at all, let alone like $1.70 over for any dollar that they make.
Yeah, it's very scary, and there's a lot of people hear in the news like rising interest rates or different tax changes or all this kind of stuff, and you know what? It's a lot to kind of take in all at once, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you want to be able to, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you have an advisor or a planner or someone that's helping you with it, you just want to know exactly what's happening with your money, and at the end of the day, if you're going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you give to parents who are maybe starting to think maybe their kids are a little bit on kind of the older age of who we kind of service here at STEM Mind? So looking at maybe like, the 14 and like high school age group. So what advice would you have for parents who are looking to start saving for retirement, and how can they kind of make sure that, some of those scary things and, scary stats don't necessarily affect them as negatively as they might worry about?
Yeah, you know what I would say as a piece of advice is start early and do it often, right? I mean, the first thing, cardinal rule in investing is always pay yourself first. So take a certain percentage of your income that you're making, whether it's 10 or 15%, right off the top and put it into your savings, right? Whether it's into your registered retirement savings plan or your RSP, or your tax-free savings account, your TFSA. Those are some great vehicles that you can either use for retirement or saving up for a major purchase or whatever it happens to be, but always make sure that you're paying yourself first, and that as long as it comes out of your accounts right away and you don't even notice it, it's something that you're not going to spend. Because what I find with a lot of my clients is if they have money in their accounts, they're spending it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, even for me as well, I just personal story that I have a TFSA, and that's what I did too. Is I purposely had it so I could get them to set up the automatic withdrawals, so that way it's just gone. And I love the TFSA because I can't touch it. So even if I wanted to I'm just gonna dip into my savings, I have to go to the bank and ask the advisor to kind of take it out. And so it's really good to have that automatic withdrawal, because then it's one of those things where it's on my hands, I can't touch it. I know it's in there for the purpose that I need it to be. And I think that how you said that pay yourself first is really good advice, and really good advice that as parents you can share with your kids as well. It's a very kind of quick, simple phrase that just starting to teach them about, you always want to give yourself a little bit too, so that later on down the road they're better prepared, whether you're in your 40s, whether you're 14 and just starting your first job or paper route or whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. It's a really easy way to start saving, and a good way to kind of get that conversation going with your kids without it being too in depth or scary or over their heads or anything like that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you want to make it fun for them too, right? I mean, whether you're saving for a specific goal, like a house or a car or something like that, mm-hmm. You should have some goals set of certain achievements that you want to hit, and a timeline attached to it, right? So that you at least have an idea of how much you want to put away, and realistically speaking, you'd want to have it somewhat invested in something, so that's growing and it's not just sitting there in cash.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, everything every year gets more and more expensive. So if your cash is just sitting there and it's not growing, then you're actually losing money over time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. So we had talked a little bit about earlier, you had mentioned a point that, I hadn't really considered, and now as I'm, getting older and getting into my adult life, something I probably should start considering. So I just watched it go through, my parents kind of go through that with my grandparents is, so now that we are, now that my brother and I are adults, and my parents no longer have to save for our university education and get things kind of going through there, now they have to kind of more so think about their parents. So they're kind of in that gap age where the kids are growing up and now the parents are getting older. So what do they need to kind of do, or how do you make sure that you're not only saving for your kids but also other members of your family?
Yeah, and it's very tough because for parents today, they're in the sandwich generation, in the sense that they're taking care of their kids and they're also taking care of their aged parents, right?
Yeah.
And I personally had to go through it with my grandparents, and they got ill, and basically we had to put them in a retirement home or a long-term care facility. And the government does help out in a lot of ways, mm-hmm. but it can get very expensive, and it's something that people should be planning for. A lot of people see retirement as I'm going to be traveling, I'm going to be doing all the things that I couldn't do when I was working. But yeah. Another major expense in retirement is the cost of healthcare. It's rising, and as more of the baby boomers get into that need of healthcare, it's going to get only more expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to cut you off there, but
yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
One other thing that I was going to mention, just as a little, it's a good stat to know, is that. Basically, if you're looking at a retirement home or a long-term care facility in your area, the average price per month is similar to the annual property taxes that you're paying in the same area. Wow. So if you're paying, say, $6,000 a year in property taxes, that's what you'll be paying on a monthly basis to stay in a retirement home.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a lot of money. So, so you want to make sure you're saving for that as well. But I think even going back to kind of your earlier point is, saving for maybe your parents or, your aunts or uncles or older generation, but also saving for your own retirement plan and having that backup for, in case something does go wrong, or in case you do get ill, is kind of helping out where, maybe your kids are starting to save for you, but you also have that backup plan so that, we always kind of joke here at Sunmind sometimes that, sometimes you want to plan for the worst case scenario so that when the worst case scenario happens, you're like, well, I already know what I'm going to do. So, yeah, great advice of trying to not only prepare for the people you love, but also for yourself. Because at the end of the day, you also have to take care of yourself as well. So.
And you know what? That's a great point. Like, plan for the worst, and then if the worst doesn't happen, you have extra money. Like, you're in the gravy, right? So
exactly.
It's just having that mindset and applying it to a lot of your financials in general. It will really take you further and give you that successful retirement that everybody wants.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Well, we are hosting workshops coming up next Friday. We're hosting one, and then another one in May with Daniel and Paul. So it's a STEM Minds and Investors Group kind of joint venture where Daniel and Paul will be joining us upstairs here in the loft. And we'll be answering questions and giving some more kind of tips and advice on savings and investments for our parents. And then those of us at STEM Minds will take care of your kids downstairs for the evening. So this Friday, I believe we're doing robotics workshop, which is always very exciting. So yeah, for those of you who are interested and are always worried about, oh man, what am I going to do with my kids on the Friday nights, for a good babysitter and all that kind of stuff, you can come and check out some really cool STEM-related activities, and they can learn something downstairs while you're learning something upstairs too, and then that way you can kind of share the knowledge. And I believe you will have like dinner and refreshments provided as well, which is always an exciting bonus. Who doesn't love dinner and refreshments to go along with knowledge, right? So I think registrations through that are done through Eventbrite, and I will post the link in the comments again for those of you who are watching today. And registration, I believe you're hoping to get most done in by Sunday so that you can get catering and things done, right?
We want to make sure that we have enough food for everybody that comes out.
Yeah.
And we want you to bring out the whole family and learn some things that they don't teach you in school.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big thing that Paul and I were actually talking about yesterday is, that us being, the ages that we are, is like now at, in my mid-20s, I'm now starting to understand how like investments and financials and things like that work. But, I can only imagine how much more successful those investments and things would be if I had learned about them and kind of started knowing about them at an earlier age. So definitely very, very useful stuff to learn, not only for yourselves, but for the whole family, like Daniel said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for joining us here, Daniel. I'm sure this is not the last time that we will see Paul and Daniel joining us on our Facebook Lives. We constantly have new topics and new things that we want to kind of discuss. So hope to see you all next Friday, not only on our next installment of Fearless Fridays, which I will be talking about design thinking, which was my original plan for this Friday, and then Paul, Daniel, and I were kind of talking, and we were like, no, yeah, let's talk about investments instead. So design thinking will now be next Friday at 3 o'clock for our next installment of Fearless Fridays. If we don't see you on Friday on Facebook Live, hopefully we will see you here at our events next Friday night. So thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
Daniel.
you for having me, and hopefully we'll see you out on Friday.
Exactly, yeah. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.
See you.